Hear this now, she is Pack!
The klaxon on Deck 7 never sounded twice in one shift, not in the 4 years I had served aboard the Aranthus Reach. So when it went off a second time, right after the drill horn had barely finished echoing, every non-human on the mess deck froze the way prey animals freeze, perfectly still, waiting to see which direction the danger was coming from. I kept eating, not because I was brave, because I had learned, the hard way, that panicking in front of the Kesserine crew only earned me another round of jokes about the soft one who couldn't survive a hard sneeze. My name is Aranthus, structural systems technician, and I was the only human on a station crewed by 900 beings from 11 different worlds. Relax, said Duvorn, a Kesserine cargo master built like a slab of armored coral, not bothering to lower his voice. It's probably her stomach growling. Humans are so loud for something so breakable. The table laughed. I kept my eyes on my tray and told myself, again, that I was used to it. 6 months in and I still wasn't, not really. That was when the far doors opened, and the whole compartment went still in an entirely different way. He was easily 2.5 meters of corded gray muscle and old scars, moving like the room belonged to him and simply hadn't been informed yet. I didn't know his name then. I only knew what everyone on the Aranthus Reach already whispered about. A ThTheyian warcast warrior, a species that hadn't lost a ground engagement in recorded memory, sitting alone in the far corner because no one, not even the station's own security chief, dared sit near him uninvited. That's Vesk, murmured Ilina, a Corvith Systems analyst 2 seats down. Boarded 11 days ago. Nobody knows his assignment. Command won't say. I watched him eat in silence, methodical, unbothered, until, for no reason I could name, his head turned. Not toward Duvorn, not toward Ilina. Toward me. 2 seconds of eye contact, gold-flecked and unreadable, and then he looked away like nothing had happened. I told myself it meant nothing. I was wrong. 3 days later I was elbow-deep in a coolant manifold in the lower engineering crawlways, 3 decks below anywhere anyone bothered to look for me, when I heard footsteps that didn't belong to any tech on my shift roster. Heavy, unhurried, deliberate. Vesk filled the corridor entrance. You are the human, he said. His voice was low gravel, each word placed with careful precision, like a language learned rather than absorbed. Marin, I said, because it seemed important, even though every survival instinct I owned was screaming that correcting an apex predator's grammar was not a wise use of my remaining lifespan. Aranthus. He stepped closer, head tilting slightly, nostrils flaring once. You carry the smell of machine oil, and something beneath it. Anxiety, probably, I said before I could stop myself. It's been a long shift. Something shifted in his jaw. Not a smile, ThTheyian faces weren't built for those, but something loosened. You are afraid of me. Not a question. Constantly, I admitted. I'm just very good at finishing my work anyway. He studied me a long moment, the way a scientist studies a sample that had just contradicted every assumption in the literature. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back into the dark of the corridor. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know what there was to tell. The next morning, there was an empty seat across from him at breakfast, and he was already looking at me when I noticed it. I made myself walk over, made myself sit. You did not sleep, he said. No point lying to something that can smell what I had for lunch yesterday, I said. Why me? There are 900 people on this station. Most of them bigger, better armed. Why does a ThTheyian warcast warrior care about a systems technician? He was quiet long enough that I thought I'd overstepped. Then, on my homeworld, before a cub is permitted to hunt, we do not test its strength. Strength is common. We put the cub in a den with something it cannot defeat by force, and we watch. Most freeze. Some run, that is not shame, only sense. But a rare few stay calm, and search for the answer force cannot give them. We do not call those cubs weak. We call them dangerous in a way that lasts. I thought about the coolant manifold, the quiet satisfaction of a problem solved with hands instead of claws. You were testing me in that corridor, I said slowly. I did not need to test you, he said. I only needed to watch. You were afraid, and your hands did not stop moving. That combination is rarer among small ones than you would believe. Word of the shared meal moved through the station faster than any bulletin. By that afternoon, Juvorn found me near the cargo bay, and for the first time his usual mockery had a thread of something else underneath. "Be careful," he said, and meant it. "Whatever he wants from you, it is not nothing." He was right. For days later, the Aranthus Reach took a hit that had nothing to do with sensors malfunctioning. Unregistered raiders, 3 ships, no hail, no warning, cutting straight for the ship's spine to force a boarding at the reactor ring. I was rerouted mid-shift, no explanation, straight to the command deck, where Vesk was already waiting. "Your station has changed," he said. When I opened my mouth to protest that my post was 3 decks down. "You know this ship's crawlways better than anyone standing on this bridge. That is worth more right now than a sidearm." The commander didn't like it. Reassigning an engineering tech to a live combat corridor wasn't standard doctrine. But Vesk's voice cut through her hesitation like a blade through cloth. "I have watched this one work under fear. She does not freeze. Trust me on this or lose the reactor ring." She trusted him. We went in together, me tracing the manual override sequence on a bulkhead panel that had been offline for repairs since last month. Vesk holding the breach point behind me with a kind of controlled violence that made the corridor feel like it was holding its breath. My hands shook right up until the moment they had to stop shaking, and then, somehow, they did. The panel chimed green half a second before the raiders broke through. The bulkhead sealed. 3 of them trapped on the wrong side of solid alloy. "They will not get through that without cutting gear," I said, chest heaving. "Then we have time," Vesk said. "Time we will use." We didn't stop there. A second breach, a reactor console half overridden by raiders trying to force a containment failure. My hands running an emergency reversal sequence while Vesk cleared the room around me with brutal, economical precision. By the time the all-clear sounded through the ship, I was sitting on the floor of the reactor control room, back against the console that had just saved the whole ship, shaking with the kind of exhaustion that comes after fear finally has somewhere to go. Vesk lowered himself down beside me. An odd, careful posture for someone his size in a room built for smaller frames. "You did well," he said. "I was terrified the entire time," I admitted. "I know. I could smell it. And still your hands did not stop." He paused. "Among my people there is an old word for that scent. We called it pack-marked, a rare trait, tied not to species, but to the particular alloy of fear and steadiness under it." I did not believe the old stories myself until a corridor, and a coolant manifold, and a small clawless creature who did not run. That evening, in a mess hall gone quiet the moment we walked in together, Juvorn started to say something about the human's new pet project. Vesk did not raise his voice. He simply turned his head, the whole room's temperature seeming to drop several degrees at the angle of his gaze alone. "She is not a pet," he said. "She is pack. Threaten her again, and you threaten kin of mine, and I do not make that declaration twice. Nobody in that hall ever mocked me again." Word of it, I would learn later, traveled through Threxian channels faster than any official dispatch. The story of a warcast warrior naming a human kin in the middle of a live boarding action. Other worlds would hear it. Other species would start to wonder what, exactly, they had misjudged about the small, clawless creatures who had never once needed claws to matter. I didn't know yet how far that story would travel. I only knew that I would never again walk into a room as the fragile one. I would walk in as someone's pack.